Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Meet Me at the Spot. I'm your host, Holly, and this week I am so excited about my conversation with Mattie, who is the Director of Communications for the Youth Sexpert Program. The Youth Sexpert Program is a nonprofit dedicated to providing free, comprehensive sex education to today's youth. She also works in digital media and freelance writing. A history and policy girl at heart, she works to make communities inclusive and safe for all while highlighting her passion for comprehensive sex education. She is located in Kansas City and is a full-time mom to a neurodivergent kiddo whom she hopes to one day practice what she teaches when it comes to learning about sex education. I'm really excited. If you didn't see my post yesterday, Mattie reached out to me and asked to be on the show, and it really warmed my heart. Go back and read the caption from my coming soon post featuring Mattie, and you can get the full story there. But I will not talk any longer and jump right on into my conversation with Mattie. Welcome, Mattie, to the podcast. I am so excited to have you here.
I'm so excited to be here, Holly. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So I'm really excited to get to know more about you and the amazing work that you do. But for the listeners, can you introduce yourself? Tell us who you are, what you do, a little bit about what you're about.
Yeah, so like Holly said, my name is Mattie. My pronouns are she and her. Currently, I'm the director of communications for a nonprofit called the Youth Sexpert Program, which is based nationwide, and we offer comprehensive sex education to today's youth, which we consider ages 14 to 18, so middle school, high school age youth. But that's not my day job. I have other day jobs. So I run social media for a private high school, and I also freelance write on the side as well. So this is definitely a passion project of mine, working for YSP, and also a little bit of a dream as well to work for a nonprofit and run their social media and do collabs like we're doing today. And just getting to work on curriculum and sex education is something that I'm really passionate about. So yeah, I'm based in the Midwest, which is also really fun because there's always it's always something happening here that I can relate to sex education wise. And yeah, I'm a mom. I have a child who is on the spectrum, so I'm really big into learning about being a neurodivergent parent for my child. And that's also, I'm hoping that I can practice what I teach as my child grows up and teaching them about sex and sex education. And so this is just as much of a learning experience for me in this position with YSP as it is about teaching and providing comprehensive education and materials to others as well. So that's a little bit about me.
I love that. That's amazing. So the question I always ask all of my guests right off the bat is, what got you into this work? What really kind of got you into wanting to talk about sex with the teens of America?
Yeah, it starts a little bit with just my background. Growing up, I was in Catholic education, preschool through freshman year of high school, and then switched to public high school for my last 3 years. But I did not have any sort of semblance of sex education. And I didn't realize that until I was probably a sophomore or a junior in college, which was a very jarring it was very jarring for me to realize that I was in a long-term relationship. I was engaged at that point, and I kind of was realizing my friends were talking about aspects of their life and things happening in their sex lives that I was just like, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Mhm.
Something is missing. And I very quickly realized what was missing was a comprehensive sex education, both from my parents, from my school system, from, my peers, my teachers everywhere. And so I became very interested in sharing my lack of sex education experience with my friends and then networking with other people. And it really wasn't until after I graduated from grad school and had my child in the middle of COVID in 2020 that I started to kind of think, what can I do? What more can I do with this? There has to be something that I can do because I know that there's other young people out there like me right now who are 14, 15, 16 that are not getting the sex education they need to keep them safe, to keep them healthy, to keep them informed. And there's got to be something I can do. And I had this idea of maybe I should start a nonprofit here in the Midwest. Like, this is such a hot spot. Like, there's got to be something. And literally just happened to be on LinkedIn surfing just sex educators. And I found Tara, who's our CEO and founder of the Youth Sexpert Program, and just happened to message her and just say, hey, I'm really into sex education. I'm really into sharing my experiences. I see that you started this nonprofit. It looks great. I'm sure you have a very robust team, but if you ever need volunteers, I'd love to jump in. And lo and behold, she messaged back right away and she was like, it's just me. So when can you start? And we're a team of
Wow.
4 now, and which is great. But yeah, it really was kind of just happenstance that I found an organization that aligns with my values. Tara's an amazing sex educator herself, really experienced, really has a lot of credentials, and I really trust her leading this organization, and I believe in what she teaches and what she practices, and it's just been a good fit ever since. And I really feel like that void of, what can I do? Where do I fit in? How can I use almost this like internal rage and being upset about not having these experiences as a younger person? How can I make that different for people around the nation? And being with YSP is how it's happening, and it's great. So, yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. That's so cool. I want to make a big diagram of all of the sexual health educators that I've had on my show. And the intersections, like it's going to be like a Venn diagram, the intersections of sex educators who went to Catholic school or grew up Catholic and who are neurodivergent. There are so many intersections that I feel like every time I interview a sex educator, like, so I went to Catholic school, and I was like, say less, get it.
Yeah.
Also went to Catholic
Yeah.
school.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like it's surprising, but yet not surprising of how many people also start their sentence with, well, I went to private school, I went to Catholic school. And, um, just looking back at my experience and also doing the research and kind of learning about, you know, relearning about the church in a new light. I'm not a practicing Catholic. I don't even really know if I am religious at this point. I guess I would say I'm agnostic, atheist, maybe. I really don't know. But I do know that I am not Catholic and that I do
Mhm.
not believe in Catholicism and what the church teaches. And I definitely don't believe in the way that they handle sex and sex education and sexual health. So that is the one thing that I know, and the one thing that I really fight hard and want to change. And one of the more exciting things about being a parent, I guess, is knowing that there's going to come a time when I get to do things differently for my child that my parents didn't do for me. And that gives me hope. And that's definitely why I think this work is important that we do, and that so many others do, and that we all do it in different ways. But our common goal is just to provide that comprehensive and safe sex education for young people.
Yeah, no, I love that. I know I think about that every day too. As a mom, and the work that we start with them at a young age that, around consent and around boundaries. And, when my toddler says, stop, mama, I stop immediately. Or when I say, can
Mhm.
I have a hug? And she goes, no, mama. And I'm like, okay. And I don't make it this
Yeah.
big thing. We don't force hugging. But I've talked about on the show a few times that, we started going through, talking about body parts and stuff like that. We call the vulva and everything. And we have like a cute, like my body book, and it includes like the genitals. And it's like one of her
Mhm.
favorite books to read. And my spouse is like not a sex educator. And they're always like, it's so weird when we get to the genitals part for me. And I was like, it's totally fine. I get it. For me, I'm like, vulva,
Yeah.
penis. These are words I just say all day, every day. So for me, it's like no big deal. Um,
Yeah, I, I agree. My partner's the same way, but he's very much on the same page and very, very supportive and very
mhm,
much is aligned with the idea and the mission of what I'm passionate about.
mhm,
So that's that is very helpful to have like a supportive partner and being like, no, we're going to use correct anatomical terms with our
mhm,
2-year-old.
mhm,
And it sounds weird, but we're conditioned to think that it's weird and that it's not
mhm,
okay. And we need to be the one breaking that cycle because if something happens or if my child has a question, I want them to be able to articulate and not use, you know, like how we learned of like code words and just
mhm,
like soft words. Like, no, I think it's really important that we break that cycle as parents and then we even continue that as we work with young people and even obviously even people like me in college. Like
mhm.
it literally having like a radical episode one day in class because I realized I don't understand half of what these people are talking about. Like, what is the difference between gender and sex? Like, what do you mean there's a difference? Like, I just truly didn't know because I never really was exposed to anything else than my Midwest upbringing. And um, yeah, I just think it starts with us or it starts with the people that want to make a difference. And I think there's a lot of people that want to make a difference. And that's encouraging, especially in the times that we're in today.
And the future that lies ahead of us.
Yes. Yes.
I tried to say that without laughing so hard.
I know, like
It's like
I
laugh
just have
time.
yeah, it's like I just have to yeah, I think I'm still kind of like, oh, okay.
Uh-huh. Yep.
Yeah, I gotta
Yep.
gear it up again. Like I'm trying to gear it up. I'm still there,
Yeah.
still picking it up.
Yeah.
But
I'm like, okay, we can do this again. But yeah, so I mean, I love that. And I I think it's weird for me to like hear some of the nicknames that people have that they like, I mean, obviously like that's your pee like, but like
yeah,
your flower, like what?
yeah,
That's so weird. Like when you
yeah.
talk about like especially someone like, with a vulva, like when she has sex for the first time, like deflowering her. Ew,
Flowering.
what?
I know. And like as such a reader of like romance books, like it's just always to me, I'm just like, oh God, like, can we please just like call it what it is? My
Yes.
favorite is the first season of Bridgerton when Daphne gets pregnant and she literally is like to her mom, like, why didn't you tell me this is how babies were made? And it's like, oh my God, like
Mm-hmm.
thinking about having to live that life is actually like really scary. But then also, it's even more scary knowing how close I was to living that life of like, if I would have stayed if I wouldn't have gone off to college, if I wouldn't have been a self starter, like
Mm-hmm.
wanting to learn more, like it very much was on birth control, but didn't really have a great education about how a menstrual cycle was and what the
Mm-hmm.
different like what the 4 phases meant and like when I could or could not get pregnant. Like it really was kind of like a Bridgerton episode, but like modern day, which is very, very like Handmaid's Tale and scary, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
wild. And I think for me, in talking a lot with adults, especially people who are in like their 50s and their 60s, who didn't learn like any of this stuff, right? And they're like, I don't know. I didn't know that like I was allowed to feel pleasure. Like I don't know
Yeah.
what an orgasm is. And I'm like, oh my God, that's awful. First of all, I'm so sorry. Like
Yeah.
that really sucks. And then you have, people who are in their 50s and 60s who are getting divorced, for example, and they're like, holy crap, what am I supposed to like what?
But like how am I supposed to like live my life? Just like how am I supposed to relearn to live my life in general, but like how am I supposed to relearn what it means for like pleasure and self-pleasure and like what do I want in a relationship beyond just having sex? Like what does a well-rounded like physical, non-physical, intimate sexual relationship look like? And I think that's so true for a lot of people in the age group that you mentioned. And I think that also just shows how there's just such a huge gap in comprehensive sex education and only reinforces why starting with youth, especially in like middle school on up, why it's so important that there is some sort of standard for comprehensive sex education, not only for just general education, but also for safety and for body autonomy and feeling like you don't have to just kind of be floating in the ocean when it comes to things that have experiences you have, things that happen to you. Like you are an autonomous human being and have a say. And I think that's something, an aspect of what I do and what YSP does that I'm especially like passionate about. And that's a cornerstone. That's a chunk that I really highlight when I get to do a lesson or when I get to come on and talk with someone like you, it's or do like a write up or something like that's really important to me of letting people know no matter your age, but letting people know that like you are the master of your own body and what happens and how it happens and when it happens. And no matter your age, you need to know that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. That's amazing. I'm hoping you can tell me a little bit more um about YSP, like
Yeah.
what you all do, what are you all about, how do you all
Yeah.
operate?
So it's kind of two sides of a coin. So in the fall, we have a 12, it's normally 12-week free online comprehensive program. So it's open to youth ages 14 to 18. There's an application. It's completely free to fill out. We do have parent consent. So every student that is in our classes, we do have consent from their parents. Parents are allowed to opt their child in or out of each lesson. So we cover a very wide variety of topics. We have, I would say, about half and half is we teach the lesson, and then the other half of the lessons we bring guest educators in. So we cover consent, we cover reproductive systems, we cover birth control, we cover sex work, we cover LGBTQ health issues, and just other aspects of LGBTQ sex education. And normally, stuff like that, we bring in guest educators that are a part of those communities that can really um, speak on a higher level to what they experience and what they would want youth to know. And so it's all, like I said, it's all free, which is the best part. So we just finished our second cohort. So we have graduated 2 cohorts of sexperts, as we call them.
Yeah.
And so that happens in the fall. And then in the spring, we kind of regroup. And normally that's when we just pump out a lot of stuff on social media, just preparing for our next round of cohorts, but just doing more educational stuff on social media. We apply for grants. We also try, and this spring we're going to try and do some more webinars. We did hold a couple webinars this summer that were really successful, especially insofar as like reaching parents that may have questions about our program and what their child will be exposed to, what types of materials we use, what resources we use, who we partner with, what just the course looks like in general. And I think the one thing that I'm really proud of with YSP is that we do seek and require parent consent. I think that's a really important distinction to make, because I think with our program, it's very easy for people to just make it seem like that we are providing sex education underneath the table. And that is not what we're doing. We're very open. We're very upfront with parents. We give them the curriculum beforehand. And like I said, they have the option to opt their child in or out of every single lesson. And that structure has worked very well for us. And we've had most parents, they may have questions, we answer them, and then they sign the consent, and then we move forward, or some may choose to stop the process there. But no child can go, or no young person can go through our program without parent consent. And I think that's something that Tara and I really like to highlight, because it takes a village. It takes all of us to work together, and it takes the parent knowing that their child weekly is having these 1-hour Zoom sessions and getting comprehensive sex ed outside of their education institution. So yeah, like I said, it's kind of a two-sided coin. We do two different things half of the year, but it really keeps us on our toes. It keeps us busy. And the spring is always a time to kind of just regroup and figure out, okay, what can we add in this time? Can we add in a parent session once a month? Can we add in, makeup sessions, or is there one more unit that we could squeeze in, or who do we want to have as guest educators next cohort? It's really kind of like our regrouping time right now, which is nice because the fall is very, very busy.
Yeah. Yeah, I bet. First of all, that's all so amazing. That's really cool.
Well, full
That's really
credit to
cool.
Tara, because this is totally this was Tara's vision and her execution, and just full credit to her, because she's just an amazing person, and she herself is an amazing educator, and her resources are endless, and YSP would not be what it is without Tara. So it's very synonymous there.
Yeah, no, I love that. And, in my experience, I've experienced I was a health educator in schools for a long time. And then I was a public health educator for a birth control clinic. So I would go in and be the guest speaker and talk about all the birth control stuff. And then I worked with adults, and now I actually don't work in sexual health at all for my full-time job for the first time in my entire career. But still doing fun work and really good work. But yeah, so in my experience, parents or, caregivers of youth, want to know how to do it. How do I start that conversation? And I definitely did a lot of lessons around that. Like how, when and how, and what does it look like? And there's no one size fits all, right? And so, the thing I always tell, parents is I want you to take a deep breath, because people who do this work and go out and talk to thousands of youth a year about sex struggle to have that conversation with their own kids. So you're not alone in this. Just because we are, experts, because we have, degrees or job titles or whatever it may be, does not mean that we also don't have the same struggles, right? It's all good.
I also find myself even with people in my life, I still I've been with YSP now for maybe it'll be 3 years in February. I'm not sure. 2 or 3 years. We'll say 2.5. We'll split the difference. I still find myself with people in my life, I really have to force myself to just be honest and say, this is what I do for my fun job is that I work for a sex education nonprofit. And that means that we talk about penises and vaginas and vulvas on an everyday basis. That means that I'm making anatomically correct diagrams. I'm making reels and TikToks and posts, and I'm talking about doing the dirty. I'm talking about everything. And yeah, that's my life. And I love it. And it's just, I find myself even having trouble talking about that. And so I can relate to parents of like starting that conversation with their own children of like, I even have to check myself and say, have that inner talk of like, it is okay that this is the work that I do. It's okay that I'm breaking the taboo-ness of sex and sex education because I'm a living example of every time it's like, no, this is exactly why I'm doing the work I'm doing because I shouldn't feel embarrassed. I shouldn't feel like I need to hold back. I should feel like I'm being honest because this is a problem in our society. And probably someone that I'm talking to is probably contributed to that problem inadvertently. So I might as well break the mold there too and just be honest. And so yeah, I definitely feel like it's relatable at all stages of life to talking about sex and sex ed, and being open and honest is definitely something that can be a little bit like mortifying at different levels as you move through stages of life.
Yeah, I think you bring up such a good point that like the sex educators of today, we are working on breaking the cycles and breaking the stigmas that we grew up kind of holding and having within ourselves, while also trying to help do that for the world, the people that
Yeah.
we work with, the communities that we work with. And it's a lot of work. I was just having a conversation with a good friend of mine who also works in this space, and we were like, this work is sometimes it's really depressing, and
Mhm.
sometimes we go into this work and go into the things that we need to do feeling like we're not delivering good news anymore ever.
Yeah.
So it's really, it's difficult. It's really hard to stay upbeat and positive when things around us are feeling like, holy crap, what's going on? And what does
Yeah.
the future look like? Like, I know a lot of content creators are, made a big following on TikTok, and with TikTok, going away in a few weeks, and it might be gone by the time this episode comes out. What does that look like? I mean, that's how I really got started being a content creator around sexual health, is on TikTok. And I'm like, I have this platform, I have a podcast. So for me, it's like, all right, my energy is going to shift differently, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of people who don't, and things like that, or don't have the energy, resources, or even want to do a podcast or a YouTube channel and things like that. But it's a lot of work. It's not always, people think like, you talk about sex for a living, that must be so much fun. I'm like, yeah, it is a
Yeah.
lot of fun. And
And like there's always that and I think you also bring up a good point about like I just know we've experienced shadow banning and censorship
Mhm.
some with our account, but our follower count, I mean, honestly, is low compared to some of our fellow sex educators. And I know that they've really been experiencing censorship and having their accounts suspended or locked or even deleted. And
Mhm.
I think that's definitely something that is intentional and is really just sad and detrimental that we as educators have to deal with that, when in reality it just reinforces the idea that sex is taboo. And that is at the
Mhm.
core, I think, of what all of us sex educators are trying to fight, is that sex is not taboo. But
Mhm.
when your account gets suspended or you're in violation or you're shadow banned and you only have 2,000 followers but your story is only being shown to 90 people, I mean, there's only so much you can do to fight that. And I think you bring up a good point of just the answer and the solution is to just keep being positive and to keep churning out content and just keep being a force of good and know that the work you're doing is helping someone somewhere. And you may not get to see or feel that kickback, that feedback and gratitude, but that's what I tell myself, because especially right now, it's very daunting and hard and scary and sad to think about the people in my life who are really about to be affected by some really horrible things, and people who have already been affected by some really horrible things. And I just have to just feel like this is one way that I can give back to the people in my life who face a lot of adversity, as a cis white woman who recognizes my privilege in that. I'm hoping that doing this work is able, like I said, just able to help others understand things about themselves, or help parents understand an aspect of sex education that could help their children understand something about themselves and keep people safe and healthy and happy.
Well, you know the drill. You're going to have to come back next week for part 2 of my conversation with Mattie as we continue talking all things sex ed. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Meet Me at the Spot. I'm your host, Holly, and this week I'm jumping right back into my conversation with Mattie. If you didn't hear last week's episode, please stop here, go back, because we're going to pick up in a kind of a weird spot. So it will make more sense if you listen to part 1 to understand what's kind of going on with part 2. But let's jump right back in to part 2 of my conversation with Mattie.
I think a lot of people don't understand that like social media, basically how the algorithms work is they change all the time. And it's not like you get an email like, hey, Instagram would like you to know that these are the new, like, goalposts.
Like these are like the trends, the topics. It's like you constantly just have to be plugged in. And as we've seen from studies, being constantly plugged in is not great for us. And especially when it comes to being constantly plugged in about a topic that is constantly being actively fought against by a higher power of a government. I mean, we really have to make sure that we take care of ourselves too. And that's something that I need going into 2025, that I need to remember, is that I need to take time for myself and take care of myself, because this work is a lot, but it's only there as long as us as a community is there. And we have to remember to take care of ourselves within that wholeness.
I like to brag too, by the way. And I'm hoping this has also been your experience, but like the sexual health educator community is the coolest. Like the most supportive, amazing
like
people, like
people
hype each other up. Like I have a video that's like getting shadow banned. I will send it to like a bunch of folks on TikTok and be like, hey, I'm being shadow banned. Can you guys get this out? And within minutes, they're like, got you, girl. Like, and sending it out, and then all of a sudden my views will just spike through. It's like, I know I can count, and I know they can do the same for me. And I'll be like, heck yeah, I don't have a lot of followers, but that doesn't matter. Like,
that doesn't matter. Like at the end of the day, it's just people supporting people and people being good people. And I think that's just what's so lacking. And at the core of it, like, we all just want to be a good person, and we all just want to help each other because we're all working for the same goal. And I think the sex educator community, like you said, they're some of the best people that I've had the pleasure to work with. And definitely a group of people that I would have thought, years ago, I would have never been able to get close to even working with. And so I just feel so honored and privileged to be a part of YSP and a part of this community, because like I said, this is just not something I would have seen myself doing, back in college or even, 4 or 5 years ago. And so this is just, it's kind of like a dream come true, really, being
Mhm.
able to be in this position. And I just feel so fortunate for the community that's around us all the time.
Yeah, no, for sure. It really is a great community. My only change that I would make is that we all lived close to one another and could just hang
Yeah,
out because I'm like, oh my God, we would have so much fun hanging out. I like say
I
that to every
know.
podcast episode. I'm like, dang, that person would be so cool to hang out with. I want to be their
Yeah.
friend forever. So yeah.
Especially when I meet other parents, it's always very much like, oh, I feel like I've also found like a parent friend too, which is really nice because I feel
Mhm.
they're just not always a lot of like I'm just thinking of people that I work with on YSP, like they're in very different parts of their lives than I am. So it's always nice to meet a fellow mom or a fellow dad who's doing this work. So yeah,
Oh my
shout
gosh.
out
Yeah.
to shout out to us.
Whoop, whoop. Um, and it's so hard to like, being a parent, just in general, obviously, but also, you know, given the work that we do and the political environment that we exist in. And for me, it's like trying to like scope out like other like parents like at the playground. I'm like, are you cool or are you actively fighting to like dismantle my entire family? Like, like
Yeah, like
I
it's I just don't know. Like
yeah.
it's very you kind of have to like have your like spy goggles on, I feel like nowadays. It also just makes me, I think, just really sad for other parents and other friends in my life that I know things are going to affect them more than me. And I
Yeah,
think that just is a real driving force and a driving factor, and um, just something that I always want to make sure I instill in my child slash future children, maybe that, you know, being accepting of others no matter who or how they are is most important, most number one thing that you can do. And I think sex education plays a huge role into that because
absolutely.
someone's, no matter how they identify, if you accept that person. And if you have questions, you ask questions. If you feel like you need to do more education, then let's sit down and talk about it. Let's
Mhm.
find books. Let's find you. There's so many great resources out there like that.
Mhm.
Let's learn and discover together. Let's not ostracize and, make fun of, like, which was what you did when I was
Yeah.
growing up for sure.
Oh yeah. We were like, don't ask questions. Don't do this. Don't. It's like, no, that's how we learn is by asking questions. And,
Yeah.
you know, having, it's something as simple, especially for parents, is like having books with all different kinds of families being represented, all different kinds of
Yeah.
kids, like, kids who have glasses and kids who have, who are in a wheelchair, kids who are hearing impaired and have like, cochlear implants, for example, or hearing aids. So it's like, I mean, that sounds like so like duh for a lot of people, but for a lot of people, it's like, oh, that's such an easy way to have these conversations, especially if you live in an
Mhm.
area where there's just not a whole lot of diversity. Um,
Yeah.
that your child is going to, be exposed to, especially, unless they like leave to go to college or something like that. I think it's just such an easy first starter. Like we try to be intentional about the books that we have in our home, that they're,
Yeah.
that they're representative. Now my whole house is not like a DEI like,
Yeah.
playlist of books, but a lot are. A lot of them are just like, Disney princesses and, Frozen and stuff like that. But we do try to be intentional. I think that's for parents who are just looking to kind of have that starting point.
Mhm.
Books if your kids are a little bit older, like TV shows and movies, like pointing these things out. I mean, even my toddler, when we watch something together and it's like, they're not being very nice, are they? That's not very nice to say to somebody that you care about, that is, setting them up for one day. I know my daughter is likely going to be in some sort of relationship with a partner, and that's a skill I would like her to carry into that type of relationship, right?
Yeah.
Like,
I think also too, modeling what a good relationship looks like in your home is so important. Because I definitely, like, from my experience, can relate to the relationships that I saw modeled at home carried over into my relationships that I had as a young adult that were very impressionable and that obviously made enough of a difference or a mark on me to want to be in this realm of sex education, because if you can infer, I had really terrible, terrible, terrible experiences with relationships, especially, sexual relationships, sexual health relationships as a teenager. And um, that is one of the things that my partner and I really, as our child grows up, we want to be very conscious about the relationship that we model at home and the relationships that we introduce our child to model, that are healthy and that are safe and that are consensual, and not try and uh ignore that they will be exposed to things, but rather expose them to relationships and things regarding sex and sex education that are healthy, versus being left to their own devices, because that's where so many things can be misconstrued and go wrong, and possibly put them in a really compromising position. And I would never want that as a parent. And I think, my parents now would never want that for me, but inadvertently, that's what happened. And so I think there's just a lot of generational trauma too, of trying to work through that as a parent, as you work through as a parent, as you then parent. Like, the therapy is weekly, the mental health medication is daily. Like, we are working through this just as much as we are trying to help young people work through their lives too. If that makes sense.
Yeah. It's heavy. It's a lot. All right. So I have to ask, because I think this is something I'm always like super fascinated about. So if you could teach about one aspect around sexual health, and like that's like, if someone calls you and says, I want you to teach a lesson on your favorite topic around sexual health, what are you teaching about?
Okay, really good question. The first thing that comes to mind is consent. I think that's probably like going to be my go-to, because I did not realize what consent meant or looked like as a young person. I had no idea that there were levels of consent, that consent can be revoked at any point. I had just absolutely just no sense of it, other than yes means yes and no means no. But what happens when your partner does not respect your no? Like, what does that mean, and how do you navigate that, and just all the other feelings and things that come with that. I think my such negative experiences with lack of consent and lack of respect of consent is definitely like what I think I would be the first to jump up and be like, as a 14 to 18-year-old, you need to know this. Like, this is important. And then the second thing I think would be birth control. Because, like, especially coming from being raised Catholic, birth control would be like definitely the second thing I think I would jump up and be like, okay, here we go. You need to know XYZ. Like, you can get birth control without your parents finding out there are ways to do that. Let's just use a condom. Like,
Mm-hmm.
just slap one on, just use one. And you know what? If your partner is too embarrassed to provide protection for you two to have sex, then it's within your right, A, to say no, and B, to say, get over it, or C, just go buy it yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't feel comfortable buying it yourself, then find a trusted person to go buy it for you. I mean, it's not just your partner's responsibility to provide protection. And I think that's definitely one aspect of like the birth control side that I would want to highlight of you're not beholden to what they think or what they say. Like, you are allowed to protect yourself, because at the end of the
Mm-hmm.
day, you have to answer for you and they have to answer for them. And
Yeah.
you are number one. No matter how much they may make you feel like they are number one, you are number one. And I think that applies both for consent and birth control.
Yo, absolutely. I love that. One of my favorite things that I did when I worked for a birth control clinic was go to different high schools in the area. And at the end of the day, as kids were like, being dismissed, going to buses, my colleague and I, we would hand out condoms to people who wanted them. We would just say we have condoms. And the youth were like, overall, we only had one experience at a school where the kids were just horrific, like taking them out and throwing them everywhere. Like, we had to pick up such a
Yeah.
mess. But that was one occasion, and we did this often. But a lot of the students were like, thanks, miss, I appreciate it. And a lot of the adults, after the kids had left, were like, hey, can I get some? I'm like,
Yeah.
yes, please. Like, that's what I'm here
Yeah.
for. Like, we would be very intentional about like wearing our our agency logo and outreach
Yeah.
we had specific outreach jackets and stuff like that, and always had our badge visible. We weren't, trying to cause any trouble. And the adults and the students really appreciated it, and it was a lot of fun and a really quick way to get a lot of condoms out to a lot of kids. We'd put our
Yeah.
agency sticker, on the front so that they had that information too. But it was just like 10 minutes worth of work. And you got so much out of it, and it's like, okay, pack it up and go home. We're good. So it was really great.
Yeah. I think the last point to that too is like, the more that you can make an environment of where I know that you're thinking and talking and possibly having sex, like, and that's okay. I want you to know that that's not taboo. That's okay. Like, so yeah, I'm gonna offer you a condom because I'm not stupid. I know that what you're exposed to, and that's okay. I just want you to be safe and happy and healthy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's like, hearing about you and like the organization you work for, it sounds like that you really made that environment of
Mm-hmm.
kids like actively taking those condoms, because it's like, well, they know and I know, so like, who cares? Like, I just want to be safe and happy and healthy. And that's what I
Yeah.
want for all of our students, and that's what I want for every young person.
Yeah. And we would definitely do that. Like, we would go into that school, do our like sex education, guest speaking opportunities. And then like towards the end of the week, for example, then we would come and do that. And so kids, like a lot of the students would be like, oh, I know her. Like, she's good people. Like,
Yeah,
she's legit.
like, she's
Stuff like
cool.
that. Yeah. And the amount of times I got called like, aren't you the condom lady? I'm like, that is the most,
Yes.
I'm so honored that you would call me that. I love that for me. Um,
Yes.
yes, I am.
I
I'm always fascinated with health educators, and every health educator is like, this is my favorite topic. And it's just so cool because I love, like, the listener of the podcast can't see the video.
Yeah.
But I can, and I always love to see like the light up happen, like the excitement, like,
Mhm.
yes, this is my passion topic. It really just warms my heart. Um, so as we are getting ready to come to a close already,
I know.
I know this went by so
I'm like, what? Yeah.
fast. I always like to ask, is there anything that you were hoping that we would talk about and we didn't, and or any parting words for the listeners?
Good question. I know we had talked about maybe answering some questions, but
Mm-hmm.
I do feel like we've covered a lot. And one thing that I really liked about the way that our conversation went is that we talked a lot about parenting, which I think especially for like my YSP people, I think that's something that we definitely want to interact more with parents. So I think that's been really special for me to be able to talk with another parent about the work that we do. So I feel like we've answered so many different questions than, necessarily like grab bag questions like we had talked about earlier. Um, as far as like parting words, okay, I do have I have like one parting thing, and I guess I can show you because we're on camera. I don't know if you can see it. Everyone has something going on in their life. This is apart from sex educating and sexual health, just sex. Everyone has something going on in their life, and right now things may seem really heavy and things may seem really hard. And I acknowledge that, and I want people to know that this podcast and you, Holly, as a sex educator and just a person, are a really safe space for people. And I'm so happy that you've let me come on here. But I would just like to say that I have a tattoo that I got that is so silly, but it said, I don't know if you can read it, but it says "fired up, ready to go."
Yes.
Okay, if anyone knows what this is, who's listening, then if you know, you know. It's from Obama's campaign in 2008. But I look at that tattoo every day, and when I log into YSP's socials and I'm doing my thing and like making a post, for like tomorrow or whatever, and I'm, also have the New York Times up on my iPad and I'm scrolling through and reading, and I just get kind of like really overwhelmed, or I get really upset, or I get really sad. I just look at this tattoo and I just think, I'm fired up. I'm ready to go. Let's get this shit done. Like, there's people out there who need us. There's people in my home who need me. And there's other people in my life who need me as, a mom, as a partner, as a worker, as a friend. And, I feel like with YSP, people need, me and my team as sex educators to help them be safe, happy, and healthy. And so I just want to say that I'm fired up, ready to go. Hope everyone else is fired up, ready to go. And that, this work is important. We are important, but also you all listening are just as important. And so, yeah.
That was so lovely. You are amazing. And I'm just so thankful that, we've gotten a chance to connect, and I'm just going to put it out into the universe that this is not our one and only time to connect.
I hope
we are friends forever now.
Yes.
This is how I make friends. As like an introvert, I just have a podcast.
Also, like, for me, it's like, this is perfect. This is a great way to make friends. It's like one of those virtual happy hours, but it's actually just talking about sex.
Yes. But I will put all the socials so that you can follow Mattie and YSP and all the work that they do, and show them love and support. We're going to need it now more than ever in this work. And just knowing that we are all in this together, and that we're all a support for one another and a support for all of you makes me get up every morning and do this work.
Yep. And fired up, ready to go.
Fired up, ready to go. I love that tattoo. Yes. But thank you so much, Mattie, for taking time to come on. It has been an absolute delight, and you are welcome back on the show anytime you would like to come on.
Well, thank you so much, Holly, for having me and for letting me talk about YSP and for letting me yap for an hour. It's been great. So thank you so much.
Oh, it was my pleasure.
Another huge thank you to Mattie for reaching out and wanting to be on my show, and just for doing the amazing work that you do in the community, and especially in the social, political climates that we are existing in. It is truly an honor to do this work alongside of you, and I can't wait until we get together again on this show or in other paths that we may cross. Again, just thank you so much for taking time and for sharing your passion and your knowledge with myself and with all of the listeners.